Well, welcome to this next session of our National Day of Compassion, a collaboration between the Australian Compassion Council and the Charter for Compassion in Australia and the Global Compassion Coalition. My name's Terry Ayling, and I'm delighted in this session to welcome Auntie Pam Wells from Western New South Wales. Hello, Pam.
Right.
And Nathan Tyson, who's the Officer for First Peoples Strategy and Engagement for the Uniting Church Synod of New South Wales and the ACT. Great to have you both with us this morning, and
Morning.
thank you. Very excited to have a chat with you about the Walking on Country program that you were both involved in last weekend. And Nathan, you've had a previous involvement within other places. But I wonder, as we get started, Nathan, whether you could tell us a little bit about what's happening in the life of the New South Wales and ACT Synod in terms of First Peoples relationships and walking together.
Sure, thanks, Terry. Just as I get started, I just acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Mulgoa clan of the Darug people out here in Western Sydney. I just pay my respects to the Darug nation and elders and community, and thank them for their wisdom and care of country.
Mm.
So I work for the New South Wales ACT Synod of the Uniting Church. My role is Head of First People Strategy and Engagement. Part of that role was developing a Walking Together action plan, which is similar to a reconciliation action plan, except because of the nature of the church, our church is sort of a bottom-up type structure, not a corporate sort of top-down structure. So a wrap would be a little bit tricky to sort of implement because we don't have a CEO and a board who say everyone has to do that. It's our congregations have a lot of authority over their own sort of church and the way they do things. So what we did was an encouraging sort of document with options and suggestions for congregations and for presbyteries and also for our synod. It also has, for the synod, which we have a little bit more, I suppose, control over, it has some policy direction. So we're looking, for example, at developing an employment strategy and a procurement strategy, and also some policies around proceeds of sale of church properties and things like that. One of the recommendations, or one of the synod commitments, I suppose, because the Walking Together Action Plan actually goes before our big synod meeting, our synod in council,
Mm.
and gets approved by our synod. So once our synod approves it, it then effectively becomes policy of the church. So at a synod level, we committed to doing at least 3 local walking on country events each year
Mhm.
for the next 4 years, and probably beyond. But that's the term of this Walking Together Action Plan. So earlier in the year, we had one on the Central Coast with a wonderful provider there, Gawura, and the fellow there is Stu McMinn, son of the late Uncle Ray McMinn, who's very, very close to myself and Pam.
Mm.
And then we went down to Huskisson and worked with a provider down there and had a really good day. And then just this weekend, we were out at Dubbo with Pam and her mob doing a walkie on country out there. The point, though, of there's a few points of this Walking Together action plan and this particular Walking on Country program. We've had previous walking on country programs that have taken people a long way away from their local area,
Yes.
to go and do ranges or interstate or other places.
Mhm.
I was really keen to actually help our church members form local relationships and do local learning, because that's where the ongoing relationship and that walking together needs to be.
Yes.
If you go and learn about someone else's country in some other place and meet people from over there, you're not meeting your local community and your local mob,
Mm.
and learning about local stories and local history. So we really wanted to focus on local congregations sort of within I suppose, a 2 hour area of the location, and
Mm,
actually introducing those people both to local culture, but also to local people and building those relationships.
mm,
The hope being that then I can sort of step away because there's only one of me. Well, actually, there's two of us now for the state. But I can step away and those local relationships can continue to grow and flourish, and more local people can sort of come in and meet and, build those relationships. So that's the background of it. Yeah.
that's really helpful. Auntie Pam, how did you first become aware of this program and involved in it?
Well, thank you, Terry, and Yurdumarang, which means good day. You and Bam, which is my name is Pam. Thank you for the invitation to come along for the yarn today. The history between myself and Nathan goes back in Uniting when I was employed in Uniting way back to 2015, and Nathan and I have had lots of connections together over the years. And he did reach out earlier in the year about the walking on country. So I've had a bit to do, excuse me, a bit to do with some of the synod practices and definitely very close to the local Dubbo Uniting Church
Yes.
and the ministers that we've had there. And we've been involved together for quite some time as we've had different ministers posted out here. But Nathan and I have worked, I think, together for I think it was almost 10 years that I was part of Uniting, and we got to do lots of cultural things together. Many years ago, Nathan would remember we went around and did a bit of a roadshow about, some of the First Nations processes in Uniting and how we can uplift the voice of our Aboriginal or First Nations voices employees. But this particular project, Nathan reached out and asked if we could be a part of it. And we love to share culture out
Mm,
here. We love to be able to demonstrate that culture is not just a dance and a song. It's a long living history of things that we do, and we want to be able to continue to share. And
mm,
our ethos for Tabergar Rotary Aboriginal Corporation is the continuation of culture,
yes.
and that's part of our values. And so when Saturday came around, although the planning beforehand, Nathan and I, uh, you know, had the day planned out. I didn't get to go on the actual walk on country out in country with them, but that's okay. I've done that before plenty of times.
Mm,
We were in town doing other particular things, some things to prepare the congregation for when they arrived back in town. I think Nathan and the people who were on the bus will share some of their insights about the hidden things that our congregations didn't know about for this area, and how we can continue to strengthen our connection with the Aboriginal community here in Dubbo or in Western New South Wales, which I think we've got a fairly good relationship. When I say where, I'm talking about the Aboriginal people out here and myself,
mm,
and the minister. She's really wonderful. She pushes the Dubbo Uniting Church to be really progressive and engage with its Aboriginal community, and depending on whether you want to use First Nations terminology or Aboriginal community. Yeah, so yeah, that's how I sort of first heard about it. Was earlier this year when Nathan reached out to say
mm,
that he wanted to do a walk on country, and I was absolutely just excited that we could get to showcase our country out here, because a lot of people do go to coastal areas for
yes.
walks on country.
Yes.
And, the regional areas are really important for us to showcase where,
Mm,
there's country inland as well.
mm, mm. Thank you. Nathan, I'm wondering, like this time last year when we had our National Day and we interviewed Katie Kiss, the Social Justice Commissioner, it was around the time of the Voice referendum, and the Australian Compassion Council's had a strong commitment to Indigenous spirituality, and we wrote a document, the why of the voice, and why we were, standing up for the voice. And there's been a lot of kind of sadness and disillusionment and grief since that time. Can you kind of talk us through how this project has navigated, you know, through that disillusionment and been seen as a way of perhaps continuing the walk together on
Yeah.
country?
Great question. Yeah, look, the voice was tough. Like personally, I'd sort of put myself fairly out there as an advocate for the voice. So if any of your viewers want to Google myself and the voice, you'll probably find I think there's still some videos existing of some of the
Terrific.
work
Yeah.
I did in that
Encourage you to do
space.
that. Yeah.
But look, so it was disappointing, but I've been asked this question a few times, and I think. For me, like reflecting, I did a lot of reflection and a lot of sort of, I suppose, soul searching about where to from here. And I think one of the things that I remember is that our people are extraordinarily resilient.
Yes.
We are the oldest continuing culture on the planet.
Yes.
We have been through all sorts of
Mm,
natural and human interventions with our mob.
mm,
Got through an ice age, and
mm,
we've managed to survive, colonial occupation, and we're still here. So I think we are very resilient. And while it was a disappointment, we're certainly, still here.
mm.
Um,
Thankful.
we're still resilient.
Yeah.
The issues, sadly, that it was hoped the voice might address are certainly still here.
Mm,
We've seen that the Closing the Gap report recently, sadly, has shown that we're actually going backwards in a number of areas. I think 4 out of 19 were on
mm,
track.
mm,
So there's still a significant amount of work to do in terms of that socioeconomic disparity and closing that gap. So
mm.
if not the voice, the question is what?
Yes.
We've seen the Europe Commission in Victoria
Yes.
progressing its treaty, and that legislation was just recently tabled in Victorian Parliament. So I think a lot of mob are waiting to see, watch the outcome of that with some hope.
Yes.
And I think we still do need treaty and truth telling. They're very important things in the country.
Mm,
So, we will still keep advocating for our issues. We will still keep, seeking just and justice-based outcomes,
mm,
restorative justice-based outcomes. So yeah, and the walking together, walking on country program. One of the things that was really obvious to me in the voice sort of lead up was that most people, to be frank, really didn't understand what it was about.
no.
They just didn't realize what it was about. And even today, I still see people on social media saying, we said no to the voice, and that means, no welcome to country, no this, no that.
Mm.
So there's a real misunderstanding of what the referendum was actually about, which
Yeah.
was one, constitutional recognition, and two, an advisory body.
Mm,
It had nothing to do with acknowledgements of country or anything
no.
else. So it's frustrating that people, one, didn't understand what they were voting for, and two, today tell us that that vote meant a whole lot of things that it doesn't.
Yes.
So education is critically important. It's always been important for us as a people, but it's important for non-Aboriginal people because what I find is that once people actually understand the history, if you explain it to people in a way that's sort of non-confrontational and more supportive,
Mm,
a lot of people do then come to that understanding and realize that, you know, there is a need for relationship building, there's a need for reconciliation, there's a need for truth telling, there's a need for healing, and there's a need to move forward.
mm,
One of the things I often talk to people about is, the biblical concept of reconciliation or the theological concept of reconciliation includes, both acknowledging the wrong
yes.
and healing and moving forward from the wrong, but in the middle there's a bit about just reparations.
Mm,
And so conceptually, you can't really have reconciliation if you leave out the bit about just reparations.
yes.
And I think in this country for about 30 years, we've been talking about reconciliation and talking about a paradigm that conveniently skips over the just reparations bit and wants us to go from sort of learning and building relationship to just healing and moving forward.
Mm,
And that's, the relationship building is happening,
mm,
but I think until we get to that just reparations bit and the
mm,
truth telling bit,
yes.
it's going to be very difficult to heal and move forward.
Mm,
So I think, the Walking on Country program is about one about learning about culture and learning about our way, and that we have a deep and rich and complex culture and system of law that is amazing, and a lot of people just don't understand that because they haven't spent time listening to elders and being on country to hear those stories. But once people actually start understanding that stuff and the way our culture and our law works, and they get a bit of sort of on the ground practical, immersion in that stuff,
Mm,
and they actually start meeting some local community people, the relationships start happening, and people see Aboriginal people as people, as fellow members of the community, as fellow human beings, and the relationship starts to change and things start to improve. So that's sort of the big basis for our Walking on Country, is to help local church members meet local Aboriginal community members and begin to talk and to build relationship, and to look at what sort of things might be possible in a local area. I mean, our congregations are often good at fundraising. They're often good with volunteer, gifts and skills. So how can those gifts and skills and that capacity of that congregation actually start supporting the needs and aspirations of the local community?
mm, mm,
Because one of the things I do really impress upon church people is that however we help, however we can help, has to be around the self-determined sort of goals and aspirations of the local community.
yes.
We spent too long in the past, church sort of turning up saying, we know what you want, this is what you want, whereas that is no longer the sort of the era we live in, and
Mm,
now it's all about listening to the needs and aspirations of local community and what they see as important and what they need maybe some help with. Yeah.
mm.
Mm,
Thanks, Nathan. It's interesting that you correct me when it's walking on country, not walking together. And that's kind of like a Freudian slip in a way. And I'd like to check with Auntie Pam, because one of the things that I really enjoy doing is walking. And last year, I did a section of the Portuguese Camino walk from
Mm.
Porto
wow.
to Santiago, Chile, which is a kind of a traditional pilgrimage walk. Earlier this year, I did the Kamano Kodo walk, which is the other UNESCO walk in Japan, also a Buddhist kind of pilgrimage walk. And here, where I live in Scarborough on the Redcliffe Peninsula, just north of Brisbane, I'm a part of a man walk group. And it's a part, we call it walk, talk, and support. And one of the things that I enjoy about walking is there's this kind of rhythm between being on your own and being with others, this sense of community. But I'm kind of feel a kind of a hole, I think, in terms of my walking. It's like I'm walking on country. It's kind of like a surface level stuff. And I see the benefit of kind of walking together, with other blokes.
Mm,
We can talk, we're looking in the same direction, we're not eyeballing each other, and all sorts of interesting things come out. We get to know each other, we get to connect. But only Pam, I'd really appreciate if you can help me to understand, or our audience to understand, what it means to walk on country, not just
mm,
walk together, but the
mm,
the the, the wonder and the what we're being invited to is to actually walk on country.
mm,
How do white fellas like us, people
mhm,
that love the land, love walking on the beach, or love walking in the bush or something like that,
mm,
fall into that place where we actually have an appreciation of a deep appreciation and respect of country, and that I'm really keen to hear.
Thank you, Terry. And that's a very big and a very broad question, so I'll try my best to do
Yeah.
some sort of justice to it. So for me as a First Nation person and an elder of the community out here, walking on country is aligned with caring for country.
Mhm.
So it was really good to hear that you talk about your walk with the other men and how you get to walk together, and you're not looking at one another. And that's a culturally safe way
Mm,
for people to be able to do something in, in walking together, but also then hopefully you have a guide that talks to you about the 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 sacredness of the land that you're walking on. And
mm,
so that's what when I think of walking on country, It's around respecting the country and the land that we walk on,
mm,
and how do we continue that respect so that it's still the same for our children, grandchildren, great children, and for
mm,
generations to come,
mm,
because it offers the same cultural safety for us as it does today. We want it to do in the future.
mm,
Um, and I think there's many different places where you can go and do those types of walks as you spoke about. And each area will have its own significant storytelling about the thousands of years before, particularly for First Nations people. When you do walks on country out here, we show you the hidden pieces
mm,
that are not normally visible to any community member. We want to be able to showcase that and share that, but also continue to protect those areas so that they're there for the future generations to see. But the walking on country, uh, taking me back to when I was listening to Nathan talk around um, post-referendum and how we all felt as First Nations people and our allies that walked with us. Um, it was a very, very challenging time, and it has um, opened up this sense of permission for people to, and I'm probably this is don't take this out of context, but it does feel like people feel that they have the permission to be outwardly racist now. And so this walk on country process for us as First Nations people is a really important thing at this time where we're trying to bring people on the journey with us, understand, like Nathan says, understand the cultural truth telling of the community. It's not about sharing all of the uh, well, I suppose it is. But we want people to get to a place where they appreciate country, spirituality, the same as we do, whether you're in a congregation, whether you're non-religious, whether you're from another country and you're new Australian. This country has been here for, thousands of years, and the First Nations people have been here for not hundreds of thousands, hundreds of years. But we've got some really good history to share with the community going forward. And so for me, it's really a hard question when you say, what does it mean to for
mm,
walking on country?
mm,
It's really broad. It's about how, so a lot of myself and the group that we have and the family members, when we go on country, we make sure we take our shoes off and we place our feet
mm,
on Mother Earth, and
mm,
you feel your ancestral ties. You call upon your spiritual ancestors to give you strength and give you guidance on way to going forward. Much
mm,
to what our friends in the local Uniting Church congregation do with their worship. So that's why I think we have such a great relationship with the local churches, because our beliefs are very much aligned with caring for people, caring for country. Um, uh, and now I've lost my train of thought. So
okay.
maybe you've got another question you
Oh,
may
yeah.
want to
I
share.
mean, one of the things that strikes me as you talk is that there seems to be kind of a spaciousness and a timelessness, and a kind of a stillness. When I'm thinking about walking on country, it's kind of like walking over country or walking through country or something like that. But the way that you talk about it for our First Peoples is it's kind of like, I don't know, being swallowed or embraced, or, it's almost like you don't need to go anywhere. It's
Mhm.
it's it's more a being thing than a
Mm,
doing thing.
mm. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, and I agree with you. So, whenever you see First Nations people do an acknowledgement or a welcome, if they have an opportunity to get their shoes off and go and stand on country, just on the natural earth,
Mm,
even avoid a concrete, that's the purpose of it. It's about that connection as a we're only here for a short time, then we go back to Mother Earth and we go back to the stars in our spirituality.
mm,
So it's about that appreciation, but preservation is key for us
mm,
to have it here for generations to come.
mm, mm. Nathan, you look as though you've got a gleam of wisdom there that you're going to share with us, an
Look,
insight.
when I was listening to Auntie Pam, it just reminded me a bit of the climate discussion.
Yeah.
And I get asked fairly frequently to comment on sort of climate and the environmental issues and things like that. And I always come back to the fact that our peoples, lived sustainably, harmoniously, with a very complex sort of established relationship with not only country but animals and plants, seasons. We lived sustainably for 65,000 years approximately. So we have this amazing knowledge of country and of the environment and of how to live well,
Mm,
in a way that would see us not be where we are.
mm,
I think, in a lot of ways, the rise of Western capitalism and sort of individualism and, sort of status of wealth creation and asset creation has really changed the way humans interact with country.
mm.
Um, it's seen as something to exploit and to
Yeah.
pillage and to make profit from,
Mm,
which is sort of the antithesis of how we would look at country.
mm,
So I think just in that, when walking on country, it's actually a lot deeper than feet on the surface. It's about understanding that ancestors are in that
mm,
country,
mm,
understanding that spirit is in that country,
mm,
understanding that there are sites and learnings all around, everywhere,
mm,
whether they be scarred trees, whether they be engravings, rock engravings, whether they be, those sorts of physical things,
mm,
or the stories and the songs and the ceremony that exist in that place with the traditional custodians of that place.
mm.
So I think I did say recently, I think in a lot of ways, I wonder if Aboriginal peoples had it right. And in fact, First Nations peoples around the planet have very, very similar ways of sustainably living
Yes.
harmoniously with nature.
Mm,
So, I often wonder whether, Aboriginal peoples, as the oldest continuing cultures on the planet, actually had it right. Trial and error over thousands and thousands of
yes.
years,
Yes.
and they'd got it pretty much on the
Spot
money.
on.
So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I think, is the Western world still going through a learning phase?
Mm,
Has it been 200 odd years in this country?
mm,
Do we need 1,000 or 2,000 for people to realize that actually this way we've been heading is not the right way? We need to
yes.
return more to that more sustainable and respectful way of living with country,
Mm,
in order to save our existence.
mm,
Because, the irony is that, if everything keeps going the way it's going, humanity may not be here. Country will still be here.
yes.
The planet will still be here, but
Yeah.
we may not. So I think we're almost at that point in time where we need to really seriously look at the wisdom and the knowledge that First Peoples hold and start taking that really seriously and bringing that into the discussion
Mm,
about where humanity is heading.
mm.
Yeah.
And I
Just
think,
Can
on
I
that
just
little issue.
yes, sorry, Pam.
Oh, no, I was just going to add to that. I mean, there's some things that have, if you talk about what legislation now has, is bringing in around when the new builds occur, is around how they have that engagement with First Nations people around making that place
Mm,
culturally safe or culturally connected. And so and I'm probably not using the appropriate language, but it's good to see that that's part of new builds and new future growth. But I absolutely agree with Nathan around if we don't care for country, then we won't be here for it to care for us.
yes, yes, yes. And I think that, you know, in terms of my experience of spirituality, in the same way that sort of Western colonialism, has, very shallow and questionable roots in a way, a lot of the religions, including, the Christian and the Abrahamic religion, you know, are only some thousands of years old. And so I think for those of us that don't have an appreciation for, the depth of spirit and the depth of immersion in country, we kind of feel, well, I feel, shallow in a sense. My spirituality feels shallow. And I think one of the most healing things for me, Auntie Pam, in recent years is a strong it's a resounding kind of thing with the welcome to country. If you were born here, if you live here, you're a part of country. It's almost like we have permission to be embraced, to be mindful, to be attentive, to kind of sink into country. I was at a very interesting conference recently, and it was clear that there were very kind of polarized views, and we live in a very polarized world at the moment, and it seems to be, moving more to the extreme ends. And certainly, compassion is about kind of creating safe places for people to come together, to walk together, to talk together, to understand each other, and that's the genius of the walking on country, that you're doing. But at this conference, they said, and I'm not sure whether it's true, that in New Zealand, the Maoris have the haka. It's kind of a war dance.
Mhm.
But the Indigenous person speaking there said that we don't have that in Australia's First Peoples. We don't have war dances. We have welcome dances and things like that. Is that true?
I think it's hard to speak for the whole nation, and I can
Of
speak for
course.
my area.
Yes.
And Nathan would definitely add some insight to this. But in my beliefs and my traditions out here, uh, we're a peaceful people,
Yes.
and
Yes.
certainly around so welcome. Like if you take welcome back to what its traditional purpose
Yes.
was that people would have to sit on the border for as long as they needed to be
Yes.
welcomed onto the country that they were about to cross.
Yes.
Sometimes that could be hours, and sometimes it could be days or weeks,
Mm,
but they would do that gracefully. They would do it with so much care and welcome the other people onto their land to walk and respect it while they're there, and
mm,
then they would respect them.
mm.
And so, whilst we have welcomes and in some cases acknowledgement, I, I'm not sure I can comment correctly, but there were times when we had our warriors who needed to be
Yes.
there when
Yes.
we needed them to be there. Sadly, and I think that's why being such a peaceful race of people, it's why we've reduced our population so quickly. Was that there was the attempt to make peace with the people who were um,
Yes.
invading on the day,
Mm,
and sadly the loss over the period of time, which is that truth telling that we want to ensure that people understand. It's not about blame; it's about understanding the truth
mm,
telling of what
mm,
happened,
mm,
and how. The great thing for me is in New South Wales or in this part of the country that we're clawing back and we're bringing back culture to
yeah.
its richness and sharing it.
Beautiful.
And that to me is, I hope that we continue to do that so it comes, right back in the future for our
Yeah.
grandchildren and great grandchildren.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that might have been a little bit of one of the rabbit holes you talked about, Pam, earlier. But I guess what I was really wanting to get at is, as you correctly said, this kind of notion of a peaceable people and, a
Yeah.
welcome to country. And I was thinking in terms of some of the polarizing issues in our world at the moment around immigration,
Mm,
and the graciousness,
mm,
despite all of the
mm,
horrific things that have happened in our kind of early colonial history, the graciousness of First Nations people welcoming
mm, mm.
us onto country.
New Australians, yeah.
Nathan, how does the church and how do First People see the immigration issue that we're having at the moment, which is becoming so polarizing, it can't make any sense.
Yeah, look, I think as an Aboriginal person, one of the ironies I see is, people who are either immigrants themselves or sons or grandchildren of immigrants,
Mm,
complaining about immigration. It's a bit ironic, I think.
mm,
But leaving that aside, I think it's worth. I was talking to a friend of mine recently who's fairly knowledgeable, and we were just talking, and he said, Nath, he said, you know how we've got like hundreds of languages and even hundreds more dialects. And I said, yeah. He said, as far as it's known, across all of those languages and dialects, there was no word for hate,
wow.
which I think is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't that sort of emotion or that concept wasn't something that our people
Mm.
knew of, and in part because our culture is about reciprocity. Our
Yes.
culture is about obligation. It's
Mm.
not about rights. It's
Mm.
more about obligation. So we have
Mm.
obligation to country and we have obligation to our community.
Yes. Yes.
So you didn't need to have to ask someone to help you because they were already obliged to help you.
Yes.
So I think that sort of understanding of culture and of sort of that reciprocity is really important. And also, you know, there's a lot of talk of division of late, and I just wanted to note that there is many, many, many stories of non-Aboriginal people being taken into Aboriginal community, given skin names, because to get a skin name actually centers you within the structure, within the community structure. So people know who you are and where you're placed, and you then have obligation as well.
Mm.
So the fact that our people would willingly embrace non-Aboriginal people and include them
Yes.
shows that we are not a divisive people. We are not, we are about respect and relationship and care.
Mm.
So it's a very different way of looking at the world, and I often have sort of sometimes frustrating conversations with people about worldview and the
Yes.
fact that Aboriginal worldview tends to be very different from Western worldview. Our value sets are different. You
Yes.
know, people and community and country are our three big
Mm.
sort of things we care about.
Mm.
Not money, not assets, not big buildings, not flash cars. It's about, is everyone okay? Is
Yes.
country okay?
Yes.
They are the important things, and I think there's lessons in that for non-Aboriginal sort of community and the world to learn from. So
Mm.
yeah.
And that's
Beautiful.
it's really interesting that we talk about peace because today, the 21st of September, is the United Nations International Day of Peace. I think we've just had the Day of First Peoples with the United Nations. But with the Charter for Compassion, we talk about the qualities of a common humanity, opens us to compassion, which is, you know, reciprocous in that sense. There's a reciprocity and compassion, but we need to exercise that in wisdom. And I'm really grateful for the way that you've helped us to catch a glimpse of that on this National Day of Compassion. And because our focus is on compassion in action, and because you've helped us to see some very practical ways that's happening, and Nathan, some very strategic ways, perhaps you could perhaps just give to our listeners a couple of kind of suggestions about things that they could do themselves or where they are to help this process of walking on country and being compassionate and peaceable and welcoming to each other. Perhaps, Auntie Pam, you could lead us off.
Oh my gosh, I thought you were going to start with Nathan then. Some tips for people to have some compassion about walking on country. Um, it's a really simple tip. And if they want to do it in collaboration with First Nations people,
Yes.
then seek out the person that they know in that community and then walk together.
Mm.
Just one small example was on Sunday here in Dubbo in Western New South Wales. We had um, the rally against racism, which
Yeah.
is really more about us walking together,
Yes.
which is the words you use. And people from many different walks of life did that walk in Dubbo across the bridge and into the park, and the powerful speeches at the park around how we can continue to respect one another and the races
Mm.
that live in this community and are growing and thriving. Like people are choosing to live here because it's such a beautiful country. So my tip would be just seek out a person, or if you don't seek out a person, do it yourself. Take your shoes off, go and immerse yourself in the beautiful country and just listen to it, and it will tell you.
Thank you. Nathan?
Look, I always encourage people to learn. as a sort of person in my 50s, I still have, and I've been doing this stuff for 30 odd years. I still have a lot to learn. And I think we need to be lifelong learners.
Mm.
The second we think we know it all, we've proven that we don't. So I would encourage people to read, to watch. We've got some great shows, documentaries, even some great films that portray our issues and our worldviews and our spirituality.
Mm.
So learning is the key,
Mm.
and I suppose also being open to learning. I do come across a lot of people who I would probably describe as being willfully ignorant, in that, today Google is there, and someone I know and love said one day, Google doesn't judge. So you can be in your lounge room and ask Google the silliest question and it won't judge you. So there is no need for people not to at least have a basic knowledge of things these days.
Mm.
So whether it's, Googling things like the stolen generation or closing the gap or deaths in custody or, any of those sorts of issues, there
Mm.
is a wealth of information. So get educated,
Mm.
and then we hear about sort of truth telling, and some of our mob get frustrated because we feel we've been truth telling for 200 odd years. So often the issue is about truth hearing.
Yes.
So we need people to listen deeply
Mm.
and listen with purpose
Mm.
to the things that our elders and our community leaders and our young people are saying,
Mm.
and to hear that
Mm.
and to take it on board. Not just that sort of token, oh look, we gave you an opportunity to put in a submission and we read it and thanks.
Mm.
We actually need people to be proactively listening and to be
Yes.
deeply listening to the wisdom that is within what our people say. And we may not often use academic language. We may not write, 50-page thesis on things, but the knowledge and the practical wisdom that our people have is often way better
Mm.
than things that people try and come up with. So,
Mm.
yeah, learning, listening, and walking with us in genuine relationship, I
Mm.
would say.
Oh,
And
that's beautiful.
Nathan, is the Walking on Country program happening anywhere else in New South Wales this year?
I don't have the next ones planned. I am thinking about something up around Nambucca and potentially out in Western New South Wales.
Oh.
Um, and possibly something in Sydney, because I'm keen to get our leadership, our synod leadership to one of these events as well.
Mm.
But yeah, so sort of Nambucca, Northwestern New South Wales, and potentially something in maybe Western Sydney. Yeah.
And is there anything like this in the Uniting Church in other synods?
There is to sort of different degrees.
Hmm.
I suppose we're fortunate in New South Wales ACT in that the General Secretary, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, sort of made a very conscious decision to create a position that I'm in.
Yes.
So very intentionally employ someone with capacity to drive a lot of these things. And
Yes.
so, in New South Wales ACT, we're quite ahead in
Mm.
some ways. But in terms of walking on country, I know South Australia through Auntie Denise Champion has done some walking on country there. I think down in Tasmania, I think they've done a walking on country event or two for congregation members down there. Queensland, I think, is also beginning to do some things, and I know Northern Territory. There used to be a program called About Face that was sort of an immersive. I don't know if it was a week or 2 long program where people would go and sort of live almost, I think, billeted with Aboriginal community
Mm.
members to get a real sense of living on country in that place.
Mm.
So yeah, we're doing little bits and pieces and slowly
Yes.
building on that. Yeah.
Well, Auntie Pam, you've given us explained to us how simple and profound it can be. Take off our shoes, reach out to somebody that we know, or and be on country and experience it and let it speak to us. Nathan, there are people like you. We're thankful that you're doing the work of linking congregations with our First Peoples. And if there's not something in the area that people are, then there are opportunities for them to take initiative. This is not just the preserve of any one group of people. You've stimulated us with some ideas about how easy it can be or how we can take those first steps to walking on country together. Auntie Pam and Nathan, thank you so much for being a part of our
You're
National Day
welcome.
of Compassion. Thank you for the work that you're doing. We hope that we are deeply listening, and that we can continue to walk on country together, and see our dream of a more compassionate continent realised every day. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for
You're
having
welcome.
us.
Thank you.
Bye for now.